after I finished doing Grace and Grit, as I explained, it was as if there was just a whole series of books unleashed, ones that have been kind of stacked up, waiting to be written. And they all started to come out very, very quickly, particularly once sex, ecology, spirituality was done. And I had sort of moved from so-called Wilber 3 to Wilber 4. And this was the first, I think, truly integral framework. And it was referred to as AQAL. It had all quadrants, all levels, all lines, all states, all types. And these were the 5 elements that showed up consistently in world cultures in explaining reality, human being, external reality, and so on. And so these were things that if you wanted to have a truly comprehensive or integral framework, you at least needed to say something about these 5 dimensions. And some of them were already known, but some of them were, in a sense, relatively speaking, new discoveries on my part. And in particular, it was the notion of the 4 quadrants, that moment to moment, reality and every phenomena in it has 4 dimensions, inside and an outside, in the singular and the plural form. So this gives every phenomena an experiential or intentional dimension, a behavioral dimension, a system or social dimension, and a cultural dimension, or I, we, it, and its. And just seeing those 4 dimensions was extraordinary breakthrough in a lot of ways, because every time you went to a human discipline, you could find schools, sub-schools of that discipline that fit in one of the 4 quadrants. And all 4 of them then were really fighting, saying, no, this is the correct way to view education or politics or law or psychiatry or whatnot. And the fact that virtually every human discipline had these 4 sub-disciplines should tell you something about it right there. And what it tells us is that these 4 dimensions are ever-present, ubiquitous, and apply to every phenomena that's arising. And so you can use that in 2 ways. The less strenuous claim is simply that it's a very good indexing system. It can let you go in and look at any phenomena and say, okay, where's the inside of it? Where's the exterior of it? Where's its collective interior? Where's its collective exterior? And you can just pretty much bet that they're there. And so you either look for disciplines that are covering that, or you can say, okay, here's something that's absent and needs to be dealt with. So the other dimensions were ones that had been around. Some of them were getting attention, some of them weren't getting attention, but that included levels, which was levels of development, which at the time I started writing was undergoing a very, very strong attack by the postmodernists, who considered any of these sort of hierarchical levels to be nasty, oppressive ranking systems, which was just the opposite for growth hierarchies. They were means of freeing and being more inclusive, less marginalizing, were ways you overcame oppression. And throwing those out was really a catastrophe. It was throwing out the means of liberation, the means of inclusion, the means of stopping oppression. And so that was really kind of disastrous. But we did have several models of human development right up until that period, about 2 decades ago. And those are ones that were very important to be included. So that was the levels part, the developmental levels. Developmental lines was a relatively new concept. Anna Freud was the first to use it. But to get serious about using it, I was probably one of the first, because what I pointed out is that you have these multiple developmental lines, many of them referred to as natural intelligences, and that these natural intelligences develop at relatively independent rates and relatively independent speeds, but they all go through the same developmental levels. So the analogy again is like going up a mountain, and you might have 10 paths up that mountain. And each path is both similar and different. The similarities is there's real meaning in saying I'm on path 4 and I'm at 3,000 feet. And somebody else is on path 7 and they're at 3,000 feet. So we're going to be similarities and differences. Similarities, we're both at 3,000 feet. And that's a meaningful thing to say. In terms of development, we're both at 3,000. But the view off the mountain is going to be quite different from the different paths. So one's going to be looking north, one's going to be looking south, one's east, one's west, and so on. So the point is that both of them are important. So those are quadrants, levels, and lines. And then states were states of consciousness. And they became particularly important in meditation and the contemplative disciplines. And the contemplative disciplines were important because they pointed the means to waking up, to enlightenment. And that, although not something that were that common in the West, the East is very, very familiar with it. Western mystics are very, very familiar with it. And we're becoming more and more aware of its importance and of the fact that states of consciousness are how you wake up to deeper and deeper and deeper dimensions of reality. In fact, the claim is to ultimate reality itself is known through developing states of consciousness. And then types is just that there are types of psychology, types of personality, types of political systems, type of social system, and so on. And it was just kind of a catch-all, but an important one to allow us to round out any integral look at what was going on.